The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The show is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and if you like to attend our meetings, they're the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to find out more about our organization, you can go to nashuagop.org to see our website and learn about the events that we have.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and help me welcome Jim Kofalt. Jim, how are you doing today? And tell us a little about the 603 organization that you co-found.
Doing very well, thank you. So I work with an organization called the 603 Alliance, and our mission is to restore constitutional principles at all levels of government and to bring people together who believe in limited government and personal freedoms. So we actually got started in early 2015. We had a small group of grassroots activists who got together and just started to ask the question, what can we do to make a difference? So it being early 2015, we saw a presidential primary on the horizon. We decided that the first project that we wanted to engage in was to try to unite small government people around a single candidate. At that time, if you remember, we had a lot of candidates in the Republican presidential primary, and we were trying to help get people to unite behind one. So we held what we called the Grassroots Presidential Caucus. It was a runoff-style caucus in October of 2015, where we had registered voters from around New Hampshire coming in to express their opinion, pick their favorite, and if their favorite wasn't in the top three, we'd whittle it down until we had a winner. So Ted Cruz was the winner of that. We got behind him as our choice for the presidential primary. And of course, when Donald Trump won, we got behind Donald Trump. Prior to that caucus, we held an event which was our Grassroots Presidential Summit. We had a lot of big name speakers from around the country and brought people together for a whole day talking about a lot of subjects of interest to a conservative and liberty-oriented audience. Since then, we've done a number of projects. One of them, for example, was an inaugural ball. We held an inaugural ball when President Trump was inaugurated, and that raised about $5,000, which went to the Liberty House for homeless veterans in Manchester. We've also had some trainings for state rep candidates. One of the things that I noticed is, that there are a lot of people who feel very strongly about the issues. They decide to run for state rep, but they don't necessarily have a deep understanding of what legislation has come up in the past 2 years, what's likely to come up in the next couple of years, and really understanding some of the details of that. So we brought in state rep candidates from around the state. We brought in subject matter experts on different topics like education, economic growth, property rights, Second Amendment. We brought in a number of those subject matter experts to deliver a short talk and provide some takeaway information that those candidates could use as they're going out and talking to voters. So that was another big project in 2016. We interviewed candidates for governor, for Senate, for Congress, and we made some endorsements and recommendations based on our philosophy of limited government and constitutional rule of law. More recently, we've had a couple of fairly big name speakers. In November, we had Steve Bannon, who came to New Hampshire and did a fundraiser for us. That was before Steve Bannon's fall from grace, but he was a great speaker and he really did a good job. Yeah. And then just this week we had James O'Keefe. So James O'Keefe has just released a book called American Pravda, where he's really gone after the media, he's gone after Silicon Valley and Twitter. You've probably seen those videos come out on how Twitter is shadow banning people with conservative ideas. And so we hosted an event with the college Republicans at the University of New Hampshire on Wednesday afternoon. And then Wednesday evening, we had an event in Bedford, and quite a lot of people there. We had, a nice talk from James O'Keefe, a book signing, and, just helping spread the word.
Good. Well, how do you must have felt that this kind of service to the people wasn't available through the GOP or any of the other organizations. What made you, how is your operation different from what they do?
Well, it's different in a couple of ways. For one thing, I think that the GOP is very effective with the resources that they have, but we have 400 state rep seats in this state. That's a lot of ground to cover. So we feel that we can be effective in helping those feet on the ground in a way that perhaps a small, limited number of people in the New Hampshire GOP could do. We also have, we don't shy away from taking sides when there's a primary. In fact, I'll talk shortly with you about something we're doing this year called Initiative 18. And that's about recruiting, training, and supporting candidates who support limited government and constitutional principles. The GOP, by law, cannot take sides in a primary. So if somebody registers as a Republican and runs as a Republican, the GOP pretty much has to be hands off. We don't. We can take sides in that. We can promote a certain candidate and help a certain candidate and not another. There are a lot of people in the State House today who are Republicans who we think could do a better job of voting for limited government. So we would love for those people to have a change of heart. If they don't, then I think it's appropriate for them to be primaried. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, that is interesting because generally the GOP, too, is always looking at the top offices. They want a governor, they want a senator, they want a congressman, and that's their focus. But they will provide some monetary support for flyers and stuff like that. But you're focused on the 424 people running for the state office, and that's your major focus, those people?
Actually, this year, it's actually just the 400 running for state rep. So we're really not focusing on the state Senate. But again, you make a good point that the GOP, in focusing on the top of the ticket, does help the bottom of the ticket, too. So if people are going to come out and vote for governor, if they're motivated to come out to vote for Senate and Congress, congressional candidates, hopefully most of those people will also vote Republican down ticket as well.
Well, it's always hard to get some of the people to do that. They always look for some easy way. They don't want to check off, going through, well, in some cases, as many as a dozen candidates for that particular seat, like it is in Hudson, over in that area. How do you look at this, and how do you judge it? Because one of the things we had here in Nashua was we have a number of Republicans who belong to unions in the town. And when you look for right to white, they're going to vote against it. But 80% of the time, which is sometimes better than some of the senior Republicans up there, they're conservative and they go for smaller government. And it's kind of a conflict. How do you handle that?
Well, we believe strongly in right to work. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. It's a freedom issue. Again, I don't believe that I should have to pay dues to a union or pay fees to a union simply because I want to choose I choose to work at a particular organization. It's also an economic issue. I mean, the states that are attracting big employers, new factories, new plants are going to be the right to work states. So we believe that the best way to bring jobs to New Hampshire and really make New Hampshire even more successful is to be a right-to-work state. So, we feel pretty strongly about that, and I understand there's some people that feel differently about that and feel strongly on the other side. But to us, it's a freedom issue and an economic issue.
Well, I agree with you there. I mean, as far as the right to work is concerned, but what I worry about is that some of the people who have good, at least in Nashua, good reputations, but were in the fire department or something else, they wouldn't vote for right to work. And I always worry about if we don't come in with enough strong candidates on the Republican side. We went up with a Democrat who votes 20% the way
I think it sometimes depends on the district.
Yeah.
We have some districts that are solid red districts when it comes to the PVI, or the partisan voter index, which measures the likelihood of a one party or the other winning, but have candidates that are voting against right to work. That's where we think we would want to focus more, as opposed to communities where it's a swing district or maybe even a Democrat-focused district. And in those cases, I think we have to look at where we can be most effective.
Yeah, I think that's what is more practical. And I think that's put the time in on where you're going to win, and
Absolutely.
where you can win the most overall. Go into this. What was it?
Initiative 18?
Initiative 18.
Yes.
That's what it was. Yeah, tell us a little bit more how that's going to work.
Well, Initiative 18 is about really four things. Recruiting candidates to run for state rep, training them on how to run an effective campaign, and really having a deeper understanding of the issues and legislation around those issues, providing a range of support services for them that will enable them to spend more time out knocking on doors, talking to voters, and fundraising, helping them to do a better job of fundraising and doing some fundraising for them and with them. So one of the things that I noticed is that we have a true citizen legislature. So we have people who aren't professional politicians, and a lot of people, including myself, we have trouble asking for money, right? So one of the things we feel we can really help those folks with is learning how to fundraise effectively, because having more funds available to spend money on things like direct mail, online advertising, can make a difference. So really it's those four things: recruiting, training, support services, and fundraising. That's the
Do you work with them in how to present themselves to the voter?
Yes, that's part of it as well. So when I talked before about the training we did in 2016, that's helping them to have an in-depth understanding of legislation. So if they do knock on a door and somebody says, I'm really interested in education choice, that they will have an understanding of sort of the path that legislation has taken over the past couple of years and where we are today. Also, I think helping people to interact effectively with voters, which is to say, my feeling is you should always be truthful, but look for common ground, right? So I think that there are ways that you can respond to somebody who may not agree with you and may be challenging you on your beliefs, respond in a way that is truthful, says exactly what you believe, but doesn't necessarily concede the point to the other person. You can say, look, here's some points that we actually would agree on. So that kind of interaction training and coaching is something that we'll definitely be working on as well.
You can alert them to some of the hot buttons too that turn people on and turn people off.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's one of the things that I learned early on, that you don't argue with your voter.
Well, sometimes people have a hot button issue that is outside of the realm of the state legislature altogether.
That's true,
They're
too.
very interested in getting the potholes filled in on Main Street. And that may be a town issue or a city issue, but if that's what matters to that voter, that's what they want to talk about. It's important to listen and hear what people's concerns
Perhaps
are.
even to direct them to where they can contact the person who has some say in it.
Absolutely. Yep.
That always, you're always trying to help, I think, the voter understand what they can do or what we as a whole can do from as a legislature, because some of the things are just not because of federal law. I mean, one of the things that is being discussed now is on marijuana, the use of marijuana and stuff. And you got a federal law that conflicts with some of the states. So how do you, that's something that's got to be worked out. But you have, are you recruiting people to help you too? I mean, to do the training?
We are. We need help with anything from general volunteer help, because we're holding events that we want to have candidates come to some of these events and have the public come to some of these events. So we're holding events. Sometimes we just need people to help at a check-in table or to help set up or take down. We're looking for people who have specific skills like working with websites, graphic design, people who are good with writing letters to the editor, writing wordsmithing for either a website or a palm card or other kind of campaign materials. We're looking for people to help us recruit. If somebody who knows a lot of people in a particular town and thinks they might know some people who are interested in running, we'd love to hear from them. We really want to hear from those folks. One of the things that we're going to be doing in March is actually what we're calling a recruitment summit, where we're going to be inviting a number of candidates in to hear about what it's like to be a state rep. So we'll bring in some veteran state reps to talk to them. We'll bring in a couple of freshman state reps. And then we're also going to talk to them about what the 603 Alliance is planning to help them with through the process of running for state rep. So what we're hoping is that people will come to that, even if they don't know whether they're running. If they're on the fence, if they're just thinking about it, if somebody mentioned it to them, those could be opportunities to just help educate them in, what's really involved, what kind of time commitment is involved, what kind of effort is involved, so that we can help them make that decision and hopefully get some good people to run.
So you have a website. I guess you can have a look at your website to see when these things occur.
We haven't announced the dates for that event yet. What I would actually most recommend is that people get on our email list. So if they go to our website, 603alliance.org, they'll see a pop-up window, or they can go off to the left. There's a little box where they can fill in their email address. They can sign up for a regular update from the 603 Alliance. We don't spam people, and we really don't send out a lot of emails. We don't think that getting a daily email is useful, but we'll probably send out an email about once a month on average, and let people know about events that we're holding and things that are coming up and ways they can get involved.
That's another thing you have to warn people about who run for office. Your emails will double easily.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of people that are using that, and social media is something else. You have training in that also?
Social media is actually one of the key pillars of what we're going to be providing for candidates. So we'll be providing them with some technology that is integrated with social media that makes it very easy for them to post content to social media and to follow up with people they met. If you go to the county fair and you meet somebody there and you get their email address, you can follow up and let them know, it was great meeting you, would love to see you, here are some events coming up, sign up for my email list. Facebook and Twitter are, a part of what we want to be getting candidates out on more often. We have a group that will do graphic design and publish ads on Facebook and Google for candidates who want to engage in that. It's the way that a lot of people get their information these days, and you can really target very specific audiences. So that's something that I wanted to do. I was running for state rep 2 years ago, and I really wanted to do that. I couldn't really find somebody to help me. So that's absolutely something that we want to be able to help candidates to do and to take advantage of.
That is hard that first time. My first run for election, I didn't win, but the next time I did get in. And it is the art of communication, hitting enough people. I've always felt that the actual door knocking and face-to-face work was most effective for me. Not everybody feels that way. What do you do for your candidates on?
I think so. The voter interaction training is a big part of that. It's teaching people how to knock on a door and talk to somebody who, may be interested in talking about potholes or may be interested in talking about something else. But I think it depends a lot on the district.
Yeah.
I live in a district that was, I was running in a flotarial district that was an hour's drive from one end to the other, and there weren't a lot of dense neighborhoods. It might be a quarter of a mile from one driveway to the next, and then the driveway might be a quarter of a mile long in itself. So going door to door in a district that big is really challenging. I know Frank Edelblue, when he was running in that district, he bought a motor scooter and he was riding around on the motor scooter door to door. So I think it really depends on the district that people are running in. I've heard it over and over again. It's the most effective thing you can do if you've got the time and can do it. I know other people feel like direct mail is a very effective way of reaching a large number of people, but then again, direct mail is expensive, costs money, and that's why we want to help people learn how to raise money so they can get their message out.
Well, are there other ways that you have of helping people that other than the ones that you brought up so far? Are there things that we're leaving out?
Well, I think a big part of what we want to do is to connect people with a mentor, because especially for first-time candidates, they often have a lot of questions. And if you ask a question, you might get 5 people, you might get 5 different answers. But having somebody who's run before, who's been a state rep, who understands the process, and who can help guide people through that, I think is a key part of it as well. So we may not have a mentor for every candidate out there, but we're really hoping that we can focus on those that really can benefit the most from that and make a difference.
And some of these events that you're having, you said you were bringing experienced people in, so you can, it might not be a direct one-on-one mentor, but sort of a group mentor.
Right. We have people right now that we're working with from the House Republican Alliance, from the Freedom Caucus, people who share a lot of the same values that we do, and there are other groups that we'd like to work very closely with. And in some respects, I think it's helpful to have subject matter experts really come in and give people the real deep dive on information about a specific topic so that people can address that effectively.
So these events that you're going to have, are they going to be all around the state? You're going to sort of...
We're planning to do a couple of different locations in New Hampshire. We might also do one as an online webinar. We're thinking about experimenting with that technology so we can reach a broader audience and maybe get to some people who are further out. So yes, I mean our goal is to try to affect races all over the state. So obviously the population density is in the southern part of the state and on the seacoast, but absolutely we want to try to reach candidates and voters throughout the state.
You set a goal of keeping the majority or something like that?
We would like to keep the majority. I think 2008.
A supermajority.
I would love to have a supermajority. The other thing that we'd like to see is we would like to see even the Republican majority shift more in the direction of small government. So, I think a lot of what happens in the State House hinges on who is the speaker, and who is the speaker hinges on who are the reps and sort of where do they stand in the spectrum of big government to small government. So we believe that by having an impact on the composition of the state reps in the House, that we can hopefully have an impact that flows upstream.
Where do you put these new private-public type projects as far as small government is concerned? You see that as keeping the government small or enlarging the government?
Good question, and a very tough question. I don't know that I'm the best person to answer that. I generally, I can tell you that I personally tend to be fairly suspicious of public-private partnerships. I think that there are some boondoggles in there, and I think that it's important to look at those kinds of things very, very carefully. So, my my personal default position on those would be to either heavily scrutinize them or avoid them altogether. I think there are probably people in our group who would answer that with more expertise. I don't know if they would answer it differently, but they would answer it with greater expertise.
Well, I
than
agree
have.
with you too. I'm a little skeptical because you can get anything. I'm not sure exactly how they work yet. What the advantage is, I would think, would be that the public, if you get the right kind of person, wants to run the project quickly and at lower cost, obviously. But at the same time, he could have some, favorite thing that he's going to profit by a lot. And I think you got to watch out for that. But I've been seeing some very big interest in that. Now, there's a commission that's evaluating that. And I'm waiting to see how they come up and maybe outline how you evaluate that. Here in Nashua, they're trying to have a public-private operation for the rail going through the town of Nashua. It's kind of a thing that's, I wouldn't put as the first item to evaluate that, because I think you got to have some sharp people working on that to make sure everything's covered properly. And you're mixing with the state regulatory people, which have a turf to protect. So
Right.
it's going to be difficult. And I just hope that we can turn it around. I don't know whether the president's going to have much to do with that. He's saying that's going to be a key to this infrastructure. But I guess we'll see.
We will.
Well, so it's going to be an interesting time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate that. And we'll get you back later on in the year and see how the progress is in training people to run.
It's been my pleasure. And I would ask if people are interested in learning more that they go to www.603alliance.org, sign up for our email, take a look at some of what we've done in the past, and get involved.
Okay, and the rest of you can also contact Nashua GOP. We have a meeting every second Thursday of the month at the Hampton Inn. And if you want to volunteer and get involved here in Nashua, we're looking for volunteers at all times. And we have meetings that would give you some information about how to run a campaign. Thank you again. Thank you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.